Have you ever spent years creating something that you were immensely proud of, only to walk away before it was finished? That's exactly what happened to the man behind Australia's greatest landmark. His masterpiece made history, but he never saw it completed. When people think of the Sydney Opera House, they usually picture the gleaming white sails rising above Sydney Harbour. It's one of the most recognizable buildings on Earth, visited by millions every year and celebrated as a symbol of Australia. But most people don't realize that the story behind those famous sails is as dramatic as the building itself. It's the story of a quiet Danish architect named Jørn Utzon, a man whose greatest achievement became his greatest heartbreak. In 1956, the government of New South Wales announced an international competition to design a new opera house for Sydney. More than 230 architects from around the world submitted proposals. Most entries looked exactly as you'd expect. Large, rectangular concert halls with traditional facades. Safe, practical, predictable. Then there was entry number 218. Instead of a conventional building, it showed a series of soaring white shells rising above the harbour, like sails catching the wind. It looked more like a sculpture than a building. In fact, several judges thought it was completely unrealistic. The drawings were little more than elegant sketches. There were almost no engineering calculations. No one knew if such a structure could even be built. The design was almost rejected. But here comes the first remarkable twist. One of the judges arrived late to the competition after the initial shortlist had already been chosen. His name was Eero Saarinen, one of the world's most respected architects. As he looked through the rejected entries, one design immediately caught his attention. He reportedly picked up Utzon's drawings and declared them extraordinary. Without Saarinen's intervention, the Sydney Opera House we know today might never have existed. Suddenly, a relatively unknown 38-year-old architect from Denmark had won one of the biggest architectural competitions in the world. For Jørn Utzon, it must have felt like a dream. Then reality arrived. The elegant sketches were beautiful. Actually, building them was another matter entirely. The roof became one of the greatest engineering puzzles of the 20th century. For years, engineers tried countless mathematical solutions. Every shell seemed to require different shape. Costs climbed. Construction slowed. Critics began asking uncomfortable questions. Had Australia chosen a beautiful fantasy instead of a practical design? This is where the story becomes much more than architecture. It became politics. Governments changed. Budgets exploded. Newspapers turned against the project. What had begun as a symbol of national ambition was increasingly described as a national embarrassment. The original estimate had been $7 million Australian dollars. The costs kept rising. Politicians demanded answers. The pressure landed squarely on Utzon. Most people assume he simply walked away. The real reason is far more complicated. The relationship between the architect and the government slowly collapsed. Payments were delayed. His authority over the project was questioned. His designs were altered without his approval. Trust disappeared. Then, in February 1966, Jørn Utzon resigned. He packed his belongings, boarded a plane, and quietly left Australia. He never returned. Think about that for a moment. The man who imagined Australia's most famous building watched it disappear beneath the clouds, uncertain whether his vision would ever become reality. Construction continued without him. Other architects completed the interiors. Some rooms differed significantly from Utzon's original ideas. Years later, even critics admitted that certain spaces never fully matched the brilliance of the exterior. When the Sydney Opera House officially opened in 1973, Queen Elizabeth II presided over the ceremony. Fireworks lit up Sydney Harbour. The world celebrated, but one important guest was missing: Jørn Utzon. The architect whose imagination had made the building possible wasn't there. He wasn't invited. Or perhaps more accurately, the circumstances made his attendance impossible. Either way, the creator of one of the world's greatest buildings never watched the opening ceremony. For decades, that remained one of architecture's saddest stories. But history wasn't finished yet. Years passed. The Opera House became famous around the globe. The building that had once been ridiculed became Australia's defining image. Millions of tourists came to see it. Architects called it one of the greatest buildings of the 20th century. The very project, once criticized for its cost, transformed Sydney into one of the world's most recognizable cities. And slowly, opinions began to change. People started asking an uncomfortable question. Had Australia treated its greatest architect fairly? In the late 1990s, something extraordinary happened. The Sydney Opera House reached out to Utzon, not to apologize with speeches or ceremonies, but to ask for his help. Even though he was elderly and living in Denmark, he agreed to become a design consultant for future renovations. After more than 30 years, the relationship had finally begun to heal. He never traveled back to Australia, but he once again helped shape the building he had created. One room inside the Opera House now bears his name. The Utzon room is the only interior space designed entirely according to his own vision. It's a quiet reminder that sometimes recognition arrives decades late. In 2003, Jørn Utzon received architecture's highest honor, the Pritzker Prize. The judges described the Sydney Opera House as one of humanity's great monuments. 4 years later, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, while its architect was still alive, a rare distinction. Then in 2008, Jørn Utzon passed away at the age of 90. He never stood beneath the famous sails. He never watched the sun set behind the building he imagined. He never saw millions of visitors photograph the masterpiece that had begun as a few simple sketches. But perhaps that's what makes his story so remarkable. The Sydney Opera House isn't simply a story about architecture. It's about what happens when bold ideas collide with politics. It's about how vision often comes with criticism before it earns admiration. And it's a reminder that the people who change the world don't always live to enjoy the world's applause. Every year, millions of people stand in front of the Sydney Opera House and marvel at its beauty. Few realize they're also looking at one of history's greatest unfinished goodbyes, a masterpiece whose creator spent the rest of his life seeing it only from photographs. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out.